with their technique. It helps them learn how to defend themselves on the street, should the event ever arise that they need to do it. Now, when you're sparring in class, it's very, very different than if you're trying to defend yourself on the street, in general anyway. When you're sparring, your objective is not to actually hurt the person you're sparring with. Yes, you're going to hit them. Yes, you're going to kick them. You're not going to pull punches. You're going to hit them. You're going to kick them. It's going to hurt. But my objective is not to eliminate my target. If I'm on the street and someone is threatening my life, I'm going to eliminate my target. There's not going to be any messing around. I'm going to hurt them. Where when you're sparring in here, you're really at a larger disadvantage than you are on the street. On the street, there are no rules. Whatever you need to do. If you need to break a bone, break a bone. If you need to, whatever, you can do it. They're threatening your life or the life of your loved one. When you're in here, you can't do that. If you do, students tend to not come back to class after that. I don't know why. It just seems to be the case. So when we're sparring, kind of keep some of that in mind, that we're not trying to hurt each other. We're trying to learn from each other. We're taking this idea of kata as this symbiotic relationship that's going on between my movements and my individual attacker, or my invisible attacker, and we're going to start applying them to someone who's actually attacking me, someone who's actually trying to hit me, which is very different. And it calls for a lot of focus, and as I always say in class, your rhythm, your balance, your technique. So it requires a lot of that. But what I'm looking for, I've been joking with them about whether or not they'll pass or not. But in my class, the way I teach, you test every night. And so they would not be testing tonight if I did not feel like they were ready for this. That's just how it works. Because I'm not just looking for how good you can do a kata, how good you can do a self-defense technique. I'm looking for, what's your attitude? Are you expressing the attributes that I expect of a black belt? If you're going to be one of my black belts, there are things that I expect within your character for you to do that, for you to accomplish that, for you to get to that level. It's not just out here, it's in here too. And so I'm looking for in my students, what can they do? But in my book, that almost falls as third on the list, because I'm also wanting to know, what do they know? How do they teach this? How can they impart the information that they've learned onto someone else? Because that's what a black belt is. That's what a sensei is. They are a teacher. And not just a teacher like a teacher in a classroom like we have an American mindset of education, but more like an Aristotle, a Plato, a mentor that you spend time with, that imparts more than just mathematics and philosophy and ethics onto you, but passes on character to you as well. And so I'm looking for that. I want to know, what can they know? What do they know? What can they do? How do they impart that information? And what is their character? What is their attitude while they're doing this? Because just because you know a lot and you can do a lot doesn't mean you're humble about it. There's a big difference between being cocky and being humble. There's a big difference between being humble and being weak. And the difference is in how you hold yourself, how you relate to others. I always use Christ as the perfect example of this, in that he had all authority, he had all power, but yet he humbly submitted himself to his Father's plan to die a brutal death on a cross, because that was what his Father wanted him to do. He said, when we think about Peter, one of the disciples draws the sword and attacks the slave of the high priest, he says, "Put your sword away. Don't you know I can call down legions of angels? I can smoke the whole Roman Empire right now if I want to." But that's not what I'm here for. God has called me for something else. He has a different plan for my life, and I will submit to his will for my life. And so I always use him as that perfect example of what humility looks like. Power perfected through meekness. Not weakness, but meekness. And so, just a little bit of, kind of, what does it mean to control a situation and not let it control you? In my class, I'm trying to teach my students not how to fight, but how not to fight. How to control a situation and not let a situation control you. And so that can be done with weapons or without weapons. We call them weapons in English, but these are farming tools. For the Okinawans in the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, part of the 20th century, this was their tractor. This was their plow. This was their combines and everything else. They didn't have modern farming tools we had. They had bows. They had scythe. They had tonfa. They had nunchaku. They had aku. They had kama. They had all these different farming tools to help them. Because the Japanese invaded and took out all the weapons. You can't have the weapons. No weapons anymore. But if you want to attack somebody who you're ruling over, they still have to be able to farm. They still have to be able to fish. They still have to be able to make a living, otherwise you can't get anything from them. So the Okinawans said, well look, if these are the only tools we have, we will find a way to defend ourselves with them. And so that's where the comes from. Not weapons per se, but farming tools. But, karate is not out here, karate is in here. So if Aaron attacks me, I can stop him from attacking. When he comes in and hits, I can control him so that he doesn't hit me anymore. Now, it can be with a bow, or maybe it's with thumbtack. They use this for carrying buckets, herding cattle and sheep. I don't know, they probably didn't have a lot of cows, they probably had water buffaloes and things over there. But, these were the grist mill. These were what they used to grind the grain. So they had this hooked up to the grinder, and they'd start grinding. You work that grinder, and when the old mean samurai came by, they'd take it off real fast and defend themselves. So, because sometimes he decided I didn't want just his taxes, he didn't want to take their daughter too. And that wasn't okay. So when he comes in, he attacks. Now, with weapon, without a weapon, doesn't make that big a difference. Now, do I want to fight without a weapon? Well, probably, yeah, because if I'm carrying those around on the street, then I'm not a Ninja Turtle. I can't just step in my shell. So I'm probably not going to have them anyway. But I use them because they help me with my open hand technique. They help me with my open hand. So when he comes in, he attacks. Pull. Not just push. I can push. What's the matter? Oh, what's the matter? He comes in, he attacks. Hey. Ah. He attacks. Chuck yours! It works for Chuck. For everybody else, you break your arms. So he comes in, look, maybe I'm moving. Maybe I'm moving. But he can try hitting me if he wants. Now I'm just hoping him. But if it's on the street, then you just. Alright, so same thing. Maybe he can have a way.
Oh. The leg.
And the elbow around. Oh, move around. So, all right, you guys cool off yet?
I said,
Aaron, you are. So,